Welcome back to where we talk about how incredibly hard it is for volunteer soldiers to survive in Grimgar. In this series, we talk about all the stuff that volunteer soldiers have to deal with on a daily basis. And in the last video, we talked about the first week of surviving in Grimgar and why it sucks to live in Grimgar. Today, we're going to talk more about that, actually. Before we get to that, though, I'm going to answer some questions and actually make some corrections from the last video. One quick correction is Brittany does not offer you 20 silver. He offers you 10 silver, and 8 of those silver are used for you to go into a guild, and you have to literally give most of your silver away to a guild so they can train you for a week and give you the armor as a result, which makes everything that you heard in the last video even worse because you have less money. And I did forget to mention one thing. Volunteer soldiers are technically not full volunteer soldiers at the beginning. They are considered volunteer soldier trainees. And as a volunteer soldier trainee, you have to work your way up to getting 20 full silver to buy a full volunteer soldier badge from Brittany. And this badge is essentially used for you to show off to everyone, let everyone know that you're basically a full-blown volunteer soldier. There's really no other benefit besides that, and the fact that now you don't need to pay to live in the lodging house. Yes, you have to spend 10 copper a night to essentially stay in a lodging house that is specifically built for volunteer soldier trainees. And yes, this lodging house is provided by the same exact people who Brittany works for. So all the money that Brittany gave to the volunteer soldier trainees essentially goes back to him. Alright! Which is a stupid benefit because by the point that someone has enough money to get the full badge, you'll probably be making enough income to actually get a good place to live, like a hotel like Mary does. It's implied that Yume and Shihiru have both actually moved into the same lodgings as Mary at some point, but they kind of do it off screen. And the only reason that guys stay in the volunteer soldier lodging house is because, well, Ron doesn't need any guilt trips Haru and Moguzu to not leave. And believe me when I say that you want to move out of the volunteer soldiers barracks as fast as possible. This lodging house is actually so incredibly bad that I don't know how the they get away with it other than just pure corruption. Because one, the volunteer soldier barracks do not have any locks, so the volunteer soldiers like Haru, Ranta, Yume, and everyone else have to actually carry all their valuable, important stuff on them at all times in their bags, which you see in the anime and they talk about in the light novel. They only have hay beds, and they have a kitchen that I believe was implied to be horrible until they cleaned it up. And while they have a bathing area, the water's temperature fluctuates all the time. So you have to spend 10 copper a night to stay here as a volunteer soldier trainee in 10 days. That equals up to an entire silver. And by this point, you only have 2 silver left. You also have to have food all the time, so you actually have the, energy to go fight monsters. And in Grimgar, one of the cheapest things you can buy, which we see in the first volume, is a 7 copper meat on a stick. That's not exactly enough to feed you for a meal, and you're gonna be doing a lot of exercise running around killing monsters. So if you want to have a full meal at least 3 times a day, that's probably somewhere in the range of maybe 20 copper. That's me lowballing it, by the way. So if you don't have any success with the party of people you just met and barely know, very quickly you're going to be in the red for a very long time. Matter of fact, Haru's party was in the red for the vast majority of the first light novel. And you could actually just set up a tent and live out in the wild, which is actually in some ways preferable. Even Yume's thought about doing this a couple times instead of living in the barracks. By the way, there is absolutely nothing stopping a thief, like the actual thief class character, from sneaking into a barracks and actually stealing everything that a volunteer soldier trainee has. There's nothing stopping them at all except for like some little agreement in the thieves' honor code that says they won't steal from other thieves. But listen, honor codes in Grimgar get ignored all the time. And if you piss off another volunteer soldier, well, they could just kind of slit your throat in the middle of the night and no one would really stop them. This is admittedly one of the reasons why I believe, at least, that volunteer soldiers try not to get into too much drama in Alterna. Some do, but not all of them really have any interest of getting their, throat slit by other volunteer soldiers just because he said something bad about someone's mom. Before we continue throughout the video, I do want to answer some questions from last week's video. And starting off, I'm going to call you Kit because that name's too long for my blind dyslexic ass. Kit wanted me to talk about Grimgar's geographical, layout on, like where the continents are, where the mountains are. In terms of the continent of Grimgar, I can just show you this. This is where everything is, essentially. But the problem is when it comes to the entire world of Grimgar, it's actually very inconsistent. The world of Grimgar cannot seem to agree whether Grimgar is the continent they live on or the planet they live on. To the point where the writer specifically makes a joke about it in one of the volumes where Harihiro even says he doesn't actually know either. And exiting the continent of Grimgar, the world map itself kinda depends on who's drawing it, because no one really seems to know where the continents are in relation with each other. But overall, the continent itself seems to stay consistent. If you want me to talk about specifically the continent of Grimgar and what's like on there and what people are needing to deal with, I'm eventually going to get to that stuff throughout this series specifically. Because realistically, if you're a human on the continent of Grimgar, there's nowhere you can go that isn't going to get you killed. Or at the very least, as a human, there is no place on the continent of Grimgar you can go to have a stable, consistent life. But unfortunately, in terms of the world, the writer himself doesn't really go into super, like, high-def detail about basically almost anything outside of, like, Harihiro and his group for the most part. For example, there are lizard men in Grimgar, but we know jack about them. We only know that they're not that intelligent, and that's basically it. And some of you are asking if I can do a how to survive in Grimgar video, and I think I could do something along those lines. I'd have to think about it, but again, your mind gets wiped, so I'll have to think about a way to rationalize the video when it comes to the mind erasing subplot thing in the story, but I think I have a way around that, but I'll get to that when eventually I make that video. But thank you all for last week's comments. I appreciate it. Also, thank you for everyone, like, saying how good the video was. Oh, also, Japanese is not exclusively the only language that is known in Grimgar. Undead know broken-ish English, and other species seem to know other versions of different languages as well. And throughout the entire story of Grimgar, it is heavily implied that humans have had an effect on the world of Grimgar when it comes to their languages and customs and cultures. Like, there's an entire village of people who are raised in Grimgar, and they're modeled after Japanese samurai. So, yeah. But anyway, let's go back to talking about how hard it is to live in Grimgar. So let's say you survived the entire time and actually made it past your first couple weeks in Grimgar. Your friends are grinding up goblins and having a good-ass time, selling off the little parts and the little bags they have of items to carry around. Bam! One of you just died because you're still human, and a crossbow bolt or knife to the spine will still kill you. If your friends leave your body, you will actually come back to life as an undead with all of your powers and abilities. Unless you're a paladin or priest, then the god just takes away your powers because she thinks that undead are gross. Unlike the dark god, who's a troll and allows undead to have Dread Knight powers. And the only way for you as an individual to stop your friend from turning into an undead is to burn their body. And by the way, if you live in Alterna, a proper burning ritual, which is literally just burning their body, there's nothing magical about it. They just force you to pay 2 silver to burn a body, which you can really just do in the backyard. But yeah, you gotta burn your friend's body. That's if the situation that you were a part of allows you to walk away with your friend's body. If not, if you leave them out there, it takes about 2 to 3 days for their body to turn into an undead. And they'll just kind of float around the area, killing and attacking anything that moves. And this is because the entirety of Grimgar's continent is cursed by the No-Life King's curse. Which means if you die on the lands of Grimgar, you will be brought back to life as an undead with no mind, but your soul is implied to still be attached to your body until somebody, most likely a priest, uses Dispel on you and sends your soul to the afterlife. But it's implied you're still kind of conscious of what you're doing. You just can't control your body. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and let me know what you guys want me to talk about more in the next video, because there's so much more I can talk about for how hard it is to live in Grimgar, because every new volume of Grimgar adds to the pile of shit that volunteer soldiers need to deal with. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a nice day.